Welcome to another episode of the That's My Dad podcast. Elijah Clark's here. Elijah's got a story, man. I came and spoke at your church. It's been several months ago now, and I spoke about fatherhood. And you came up to me afterwards and began telling me some of your story. And I think we were just having casual conversation, but I immediately knew I got to have this guy on the podcast because you've got it's an incredible story. And we were just talking. Let me kind of start at the end because I know a lot of young guys will say, "Well, what's he do now?" Well, you're in a sort of an executive. You're 32 years old and you're with the Southern Company, and in a pretty important role. I think it's fair to say we probably won't want to go too far into that, but you've been very successful career wise, and very successful family wise, which is even more important. But didn't start out so great.
No, it didn't. They didn't.
Tell me about that.
It started with my mom, my dad. You know, it was a typical love story. My mom and dad were both real wild. My dad was known to get in a lot of bar fights, do a lot of drugs, and sell a lot of drugs, and do things that we know that we shouldn't be doing. Mm-hmm. They ran around with a rough and rowdy crowd, and eventually they fell in love, and my mom, she struggled with mental illnesses, so that was kind of tough, understanding as a young child. And we lived together for a while, and it got to the point where the drugs and the alcohol just kind of consumed the household. With my mother, she was addicted to some pretty hard stuff there in the beginning with the mental illness on top of it. And, she would disappear for days at a time, and I didn't know if she was coming back or not. And, I had to take care of my sister. I didn't know if we were going to have enough food to make it, or, if anybody was coming back, or if we were going to. There's several times where I was left wondering, is she going to come back? As she did, because the places she was going, I had been to, and I shouldn't have been in those situations, but I had been left out in vehicles outside of crack houses, and having people knocking on my window as a young kid, trying to shelter my little sister. It wasn't.
You're talking when you were.
I was probably 7.
Wow.
And it went on for a long time early on. I didn't think there was any escape. And, early on, my mom and dad were together, and he got to the point where he was abusive. And I guess there was a point in time, and it's really hard for me to put this in sequential order because I haven't really unpacked a whole lot of this. So there was a time period when my mom was doing well, and I'm not really sure. My brother remembers better than me, but I do remember her speaking scripture to me. And that was the most important thing she could have ever done for me. Even with all the stuff going on, she spoke scripture to me, and she's tried to speak scripture to my dad. And then it went south from there. One bad party, and drug addicts always around. So my mom and dad split, and after they split, moved into this trailer park. My dad's not there anymore. That trailer park. Pretty rough, in the same little area down in South Alabama, and my mom was struggling with all the drug issues at the time, and something happened to where we couldn't afford to pay for our trailer anymore. They came and repossessed our trailer, and it was such bad shape when they pulled it out of there, it just fell to pieces. like they literally had to come scoop it up with a skid steer because it was in such bad shape. They couldn't. As soon as they hooked to it, it just collapsed.
Did you watch? I mean, you see that happen?
No, I didn't see that happen. I saw the aftermath. I went back and looked at it because I rode my bicycle from the other trailer park we moved into with my uncle.
Okay, so y'all left. Y'all had to leave.
Yes.
Whatever happened, so you had to move in with an uncle.
My Uncle Charlie. He was also an alcoholic. So everywhere I went there, but he was nice to me. He was good to me, but he was a no nonsense kind of guy. So he came home and everything was going south. My Uncle Freddie had just got out of prison. He was there. My mom and him were both looking for prescription drugs that I had hid from him because I was tired of seeing it. Mm-hmm. And I thought he was going to kill me. Like I seriously thought he was going to kill me. And they were so messed up that they thought that these people were actually giving away stuff in their home, but they were moving. So they had a bunch of boxes outside their house. So they started going through their stuff.
Oh, my.
Well, best thing that ever happened because somebody called the law because that man might have killed me over that, over those drugs. And I wasn't going to give him up. I got to the point where, hey, if I died, I died. It didn't at that point, it was just like, hey, this has to stop. But I want to talk to my mom sober. I don't want to see her like this anymore. And whatever it takes to get there, that's what I'm going to do. And I hit those drugs. I hit them. And my uncle came home and saw that, and then the people found out that they were stealing stuff. They honestly, I remember that situation. They honestly thought that the people were giving it away. That's how out of it they were. That they thought they were just giving away brand new appliances. And they were just walking down through the trailer park with them in their hands, like in the plain daylight. And cops came. Well, they didn't come immediately. They called my dad because they had known my dad, because my dad used to get in a lot of trouble in that area. So the chief called my dad and told him, hey, you better come get me. My dad lived in Mississippi at the time. So that's a time in my life where my dad was a hero to me, because I didn't think I had anyone. And he came and rescued me out of that situation. He went and when he pulled up, Freddie was kind of in my face grilling me about where the drugs were, and he might have killed me at that moment. My dad pulled in and right at the right time and got in his face and had sent him running. You know, he knew my dad from when he was young, and he took off running. So my dad, he rescued me in that situation, and and to this day I appreciate him for that, because I didn't know what I was going to do.
And how old do you think you were then?
Man, I'm so not sure. Like, there's so much that happened. I would say, if I had to throw a dart at the wall, I'd say somewhere between 7 and 10.
Wow, you're dealing with all this stuff on your own. Your older brother's moved out, I think.
Yeah, I think my older brother, he's about 4 years older than me. So at that point in time, he was heavily involved in gang activity. So
it's just you and your sister.
It's just me and my sister.
Y'all fighting the world on your own.
That's right.
Just the two of y'all.
So needless to say, I ended up going to live with my dad. My uncle, that's a towboat captain, burns everything we own. So I don't have any traceability back to like my childhood. Like it's like having a house fire. So all the pictures of me as a kid, unless like a family member had it, he burnt everything. He was so mad at my mom that he threw everything out in the yard and he burned it.
So you moved in with your dad in Mississippi?
That we lived on the Mississippi River, well, not the Mississippi River, the Pascagoula River, a tributary off the Mississippi River, in South Mississippi. And man, when I say it was a small town, it was a town that they made fun of me from coming from South Alabama. Like they called me City Slicker and Red Light. They probably couldn't spell it. So it was a very, very small town. I was so poor that I didn't know it, and he was poor. We cut firewood. I mean, I was born in the 90s, so we didn't have central air, central heat. I cut lighter knot. I cut firewood in the wintertime. I mean, in summertime for the winter, and we just lived old school. I remember when I first moved there, I failed the 5th grade because I went fishing more than I did to school. So right off the bat, my dad had me running trout lines. So we lived right there on the fish camp. That's how we ate.
So what happened to your mom and your uncle back in Alabama when you went to Mississippi?
Shit, they ended up shipping her to rehab.
Okay.
Great thing that happened there. So she went to rehab. That was 3 years. So the problem was I didn't make it 3 years at my dad's. I had a stepmom at the time, and she was super young. She wasn't that much older than my older brother. So she was probably a few years older than him, and she wasn't the nicest to me, and she was on the same type of drugs that my mom was, as far as prescription drugs, and my dad was too. So I guess they all did that together, and my dad would get to drinking and doing his cowboy thing. You know, we had horses and stuff. He'd ride around with a canteen full of beer and a 30-30 on the side of the horse, and ride around the neighborhood like he was John Wayne. Things were getting kind of abusive for me, verbally and sometimes physical. Just my dad would lose his temper. He had bad anger problems, and I remember being on the river and missing a fish and him breaking the fishing pole over my legs, and just stuff that you shouldn't do to a kid. And the verbal abuse was constant. It was always a constant. If he got mad, he would throw stuff in the yard. I remember he'd get drunk and he'd shoot pictures on the wall, like straight to the house. Like he'd just pull a pistol out and just shoot a bullet through the wall like it was nothing. But here's something cool that happened in Mississippi, right? So this is God sent me to Mississippi, and here's why. Right before things went south, and I'll tell you kind of how it happened. I met a girl, of course, and I wanted to stay. Pretty girl up the street, and God used her too because she went to a church. And the people over in Greene County, Mississippi, thought it was nice to come help us poor folk out in George County, Mississippi, and they sent the Baptist church bus over there to come pick us up. They drove across, and that's what Jesus, that's what Jesus looks like, right? The hands and feet of Jesus, somebody who'll go drive across county lines, go pick up some poor folks like us.
So the folks from the church bus came to pick up the poor folks.
They did.
And take you back on the other side of town.
And that's right. And that's where I gave my life to Christ.
So what role did the girl have to play in that?
Well, we ended up breaking up, and I ended up dating her cousin. So God just got her to get me to the church.
So while you're living with your dad, and y'all are living off the land.
I'm getting off the church bus. My dad's out there in the front yard drunk with his buddies, and I remember getting off one time, and he was getting in a fist fight with somebody. The guy pulled a knife out, and my brother had moved in with us, and my sister at that time too. And I remember seeing my brother jumping on him. You talking about coming off a church bus and seeing this? That was embarrassing.
Yeah. So what happened with your dad? You end up leaving there.
Well, things just kept getting worse, and my stepmom, she was really, really verbally abusive to me, and she got to where she was getting pretty bad on the drugs, and I started trying to talk to him about Jesus. I said, Dad, I want to see you change. I want to see you go to heaven. I don't want to see you go to hell. And then she took what I said, and she said, and this is the only thing I do remember, and she said, you hear that, Glenn? He said he wants you to go to hell. He told you to go to hell. And then she came after me. She came across the room, and she wrapped her rings around her hands, and she just beat me. And I kept standing back up and letting her hit me again. I said, does that make you feel good? Does that make you feel good hitting a young man like this? I said, I'm not going to hit you. And she kept hitting me, and I'd stand back up. And finally, she grabbed that that frying pan off that potbelly stove, and she popped me over the head with it. And I rolled out the front door. The front door was wide open. I mean, we didn't, no need to try to keep in any air. We didn't have central air. So I rolled out that front door and fell off that front porch. And there was another potbelly stove right there with a piece of plywood on it, because we had just replaced the potbelly stove with another old potbelly stove. And she kicked that piece of plywood off there on me, and it stabbed me in the side of my arm. And I got up, and thank goodness that she was a little intoxicated, or very intoxicated, because she started picking up rocks. She was hitting me in the back of the head with rocks, and I remember just getting onto my bike and being dizzy, and her just hit me with rocks. And I made it to a neighbor's house, one of her friends actually, and they condemned the actions, and called them, and and almost called a law, but they didn't. Nobody said anything, and I didn't know what else to do, but I knew I had to get out of there. My time there was done.
You're just a young teenager by then.
Yep. I was in sixth grade at that point in time. I made it.
Wow.
Made it a year, and I knew I had to get out of there. I called my uncle, a different uncle, and he actually made a lot of money. He was a superintendent for a big company down in South Alabama. So he called me and said he was going to come get me. I called him, and he called me back and said, hey, I thought about it. I'm going to come get you. So the next day at school, I'm waiting on him to come get me, because we've already arranged it. And, man, instead of him showing up, he called my dad. And my dad showed up, and then you talking about a terrified time in my life. I've never been so scared in my life. My dad's a pretty big, intimidating guy, and I was afraid, man. I was super afraid when he showed up. And I told him, I said, Daddy, I love you, but I'm not going to live with you anymore. I said, you can either send me away or I'm going to run away. I said, I've done all I can here. I love you, and I want the best for you, but I can't do this anymore. And he finally agreed to sending me away, and I went and lived with my uncle. And it was just another one of those situations. It was a lot better than what I had experienced before. My aunt and uncle treated me better than my own family had to that point. I still didn't feel like I was their child, but that was the closest thing I ever had to it. My uncle, he looked at me almost like I was a stepchild or something. Maybe it wasn't like a. And he often, whatever they did for their kids, that he would do for me. So he was probably the closest thing I had to a father figure at that point in time. And I'm not saying that he didn't love me like a child, but I know there was times where I didn't feel like he did. I felt like he loved me, but I never felt like, it was the same love as he was showing his kids. And I guess that's something that people who are adopted deal with, that live in different homes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the struggle of not really feeling like, hey, that's my biological father. So it was nothing really against him, because he helped me in that situation, and he didn't have a whole lot, because apparently he was spending his money elsewhere at the time. But he taught me the value of hard work. He put me to work. He had some property. I started digging fence posts. Had me moving soil and dirt with a wheelbarrow and a shovel and leveling out property. I remember asking him for a quarter for every post hole I dug.
A quarter.
Just a quarter, just so I could feel like I was earning something. He said, "Son, if I did that, then you wouldn't be earning your keep. And you know, I'm putting a roof over your head." And I said, "Yeah, I guess you're right." But
so you're 13 years old earning your keep.
Earning my keep. I'm talking about, he would show up, because he worked these outages, and he'd show up in the middle of the night and talk about, hey, we got to plumb this new house we're building. And because we had a shed that we built, and we had a double wide trailer, and everything was nice when we were in the double wide trailer. It was a nice brand new double wide trailer. Well, that came and got repossessed, and the only thing we had built so far was the shed that we were going to build for the house. But it was a big shed, and it had a bathroom and a living room, no bedrooms. And we all piled up in there. So it's me, my uncle, my aunt, my grandma, and my two cousins were all inside this the shed. They turned it into the little house. I said, we're just going to stay in the little house. I was like, no, that's the little shed.
That's the shed. That's the barn.
Yeah, that's the shed, man.
You're literally 15 years old.
Yes.
I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yep. And
living by yourself.
Living by myself in the shed. And was content. Bring my friends over, you know, really not used to a whole lot of rules. Didn't have a whole lot of rules. No kind of structure. And my meemaw, she was sitting with an elderly lady, so she would come on Wednesdays, and she and I were really, really close. She was like a godsend in my life too, and she took care of me like I was like her favorite, and she saw so much potential in me, and she encouraged me. So she was that one person in my life that no matter what, she's like, I believe in him. You know, she always said that, and some of the other kids would get jealous of how much, you know, she would show affection towards me, and how much she cared for me, and she always said that no matter what, I would be taken care of. Well, you know, she ended up passing away. One day on Wednesday, I was coming home from Allen Southern Electric, and I was in that Mustang, and I got a call from my girlfriend, and I said, hey, I'm about to go see my meemaw, and she said, well, won't you come here first? I kind of felt like something was up, so I was like, man, I'm just going to stop by there and check out. Thank goodness I didn't. She called me again. Turns out she was late. She was dead in the driveway. I don't know what happened. Still to this day, nobody tells me the truth. I don't know who knows the truth, who doesn't know the truth. I don't know if she was attacked. Don't know if what happened. And my life changed. I mean, just right there, then and there, the one person that, was really solid for me, that I finally felt like I had, she was gone. After that, I bounced around from house to house, man. I couch surfed, moved in with my mom for a little bit longer. That wasn't working out. They were still they got back on the drugs. Couldn't be there. It was just an environment that I couldn't be in. So I just took out on my own. I probably lived in 20 different homes. I never had anywhere to settle down at. And I was, no one had a place for me. I remember the last place I ran out of all my couches, and I was on my last couch, and the person told me, so, hey, you can't live here. So this is where things got crazy. So I didn't have any hope, didn't know where I was going next. And I remember this guy had just moved into town, and he played football, and I played football on and off. I had a hard time. I had to run back and forth from practice. So running after practice was tough. So I did play ball a lot. I enjoyed it, but I didn't have a ride. So running back and forth from practice until I got the Mitsubishi Mighty Max, and at that point in time, I drive myself to practice, and I was doing it. So that's kind of how I met him, was on the field. It was my junior year. So lots happened. I couch surfed from probably ninth grade to my junior year. And then he moves in. I got the Mitsubishi Mighty Max, so I'm doing football. He has a birthday party. We went to this birthday party, became friends. He said, hey, man, I want to learn how to box. I want to learn how to take care of myself, because he was rich, and people were coming after him in my school. In my school, it was all about who could fight who and who can get who. And it really wasn't a good mentality looking back. It was a kind of a rough atmosphere, and you had to be tough to survive. And and he just came from a UMS preparatory school, and he wasn't ready for it. So we got to boxing, and first day we boxed, he said, "Man, I don't ever want to box you again." I said, "Man, we're just sparring." He said, "No, I don't ever want to do that again. That stuff hurts." He said, "I tell you what, let's just be friends." And I said, "That's fine, Sandy." I said, that's cool. Well, he said he asked me to stay the night, and I stayed the night, and
At his house, with his parents' house.
yeah. And they had the first level, then they had the second level, then they had the third level, and then they had another little room above that. Like, it's a huge house.
They didn't live in a trailer.
Oh man, they lived on 2,800 acres of prime property in Saraland, and had 3 lakes. So I love fishing.
So you here you are, your first house was a trailer that fell apart when they pulled it off, and now you've moved into this.
Yeah,
you've hit the big time, so to
well,
speak.
I hadn't yet. At this point in time, I was just staying the night. That's all it was to me. Was like, hey, I was going to stay the night. That was a bed that was very welcome to that time, because I thought I was going back to the Mighty Max, and I wasn't looking forward to the Mighty Max. So that I didn't say anything to them about it. I still to this day, I'm not sure who told them that I was homeless. They ended up asking me to stay a second night, and then the second night, I done knew the routine. It's been drilled in my head. You got to be respectful, make sure you clean up after yourself. So I've learned all these different things in these different houses. So looking back at all those opportunities that I had, I learned something from each one of those families. Maybe they weren't the best families, but all of them taught me something, and I learned how to carry myself and how to adapt. And so I'm over there, I'm folding up my blanket. I know the drill. I'm folding up my blanket. I'm putting my blanket back where it goes, because that's what you do. You stay at somebody's house, you clean up your little area you stayed in, you fold it up, and you leave it as it was before you got there. And I was folding it up, and I remember his mom, Fontaine, came up, and I call her Taney Mama now, but she walked up up the stairs, and she said, "Elijah, why don't you stay one more night?" I said, No, ma'am." I said, "No, thanks." I said, "I don't want to wear out my welcome." And that she just broke down. She shed a tear for me. She knew. And I don't, like I said, I don't know. I don't know how, but she said, "I want you to come live with me." And I was blown away, man. I was. I said, it's too good to be true. I knew God loved me, but I didn't think he loved me that way, but he did. And it was the best years of my life. I got to be a kid.
You've been worried about everything up until that point.
Man.
So what do you say? And then you graduated from college, and you got married, and you got a beautiful family now. You want to say anything to the couple? Call their name, their first and last name, that took you in for your last 2 years.
Oh yeah. So that's Fontaine and Sandy Howard. Yep.
Look in the camera and just speak to them.
Well, they know this. I've told you this before, but I appreciate you just taking in somebody off the street and giving them a home. You made a lifelong impact that has forever changed my life and my family's life, and I know God used y'all, and I know God's going to do great things with y'all, because y'all are still those same people, the kind who care for other people. And I just want to say I appreciate that.
What do you want for your kids?
I want them to know that they have a father who loves them, that's going to be there for them. And that's really what it's all about, is in teaching them about God. If you teach them about God and you teach them about God's love, that's what I want for my children. I want them to grow up and know God, and for them to be saved. And that's what it all boils down to. You don't have to be the best father ever, and you don't have to have all these shining examples of what a father looks like. You just need to know God. He's the shining example. And if you know God and you can teach your children about God, you leave the rest to Him. He's going to take care of it.
Well, I know you're trying to do that. You're doing a good job of it. So
try.
With your wife's help, we got a little gift for you we'd like to share with you as we close out.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelsey.
And my name's Emma.
And this is Jonas. We had to film our video in the pool because he won't get out. We are so excited to be filming this video for Elijah. We are so proud of him. And Emma wants to share her favorite thing about Daddy.
My favorite thing about Daddy, he helps me with all types of stuff. Like, he helps me like do art projects. He helps He helps me while I am sad.
When you're sad. What does he do when you're sad?
He makes me feel better.
He makes you feel better because he's so silly sometimes too, right? He is. He's very silly. One thing that I love about Daddy is that Daddy is such a great spiritual leader for our household. He has helped lead me to Jesus, but also helped to teach our children about Jesus. And we are so proud of him. He helps our neighbors by cutting their grass and helping build swing sets. He also makes sure that we always stop to give the homeless and help and pray for them. And every night before bed, we make sure that we say our prayers and say our prayers before we eat and make sure we read our Bible verses for that day. What is something or your favorite story about Daddy?
About Tino and Mimi.
Fortino and Mimi. Can you tell everybody who Fortino and Mimi is?
Mimi's a dog,
Mimi's a dog.
and Fortino is like he's a human,
He's a human.
and then he is like
Fortino and Mimi are homeless.
yeah, homeless.
And when did you meet Fortino and Mimi?
After church when we went to Walmart.
When you went to Walmart with Daddy?
Yeah.
And how did y'all meet?
Daddy saw him on the road and we stopped by and said hi.
Okay. And how many times do you think you and Daddy went to go visit Fortino and Mimi?
Like 7.
What's something that Daddy did every time that y'all went and saw them?
He prayed.
He prayed for them and talked to them about Jesus,
Yeah.
which was really cool, right?
Yeah.
It's really awesome. So Daddy's a really great person for helping them, and we still pray for them every night before we go to bed, don't we?
Yeah.
We still talk about Fortino and Mimi. Okay, do you want to share your funny story now about the boat? What happened on the boat?
I've been flown away.
You were floating away on Daddy's boat, and what did Daddy do?
He was going crazy. He threw the rope at me and then he pulled me out.
Daddy panicked and threw the rope at you?
He pulled me out.
We are very thankful for Daddy. What's something you want to thank Daddy for?
I want to thank him about by helping me and playing soccer with me.
Daddy's our assistant coach too, so he gets to help at practice. Alrighty. Well, we love you, Daddy, and we are so, so proud of you. Say bye, Jonas.
Man, that was awesome.
So you're giving your kids something you didn't have.
Absolutely. Being there.
So for the young man, as we close, for the young man who grew up like you, who didn't have that, how does it feel to be a dad who flipped the script and has that kind of family now?
It's earth shaking, man. This is something that I can't really put in words because the Spirit of God, man, just moving inside my house and, just seeing the hand of God moving, it's just unreal to me. Sometimes I look at it just awestruck and think, man, how did I make it out of those situations? And I know it was God.
You rewrote the script.
God rewrote it. I was just there.
All right. What an incredible story. Incredible story. Thank you for coming and sharing. You haven't talked a lot about this, I can tell. So this is kind of new to you. But thank you for sharing and just pouring out your heart. And I believe, I read so many stories about guys like you, and I knew kids like you that were at the ranch, and they need somebody that they can look to and say, wow, he did it. I can too. How did he do it? That's what I need to do. So thank you. And my prayer is that this story will make it to at least one kid.
That's right.
And hopefully thousands who can say, if that guy can pull through, I can pull through too.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Elijah.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. That'll conclude this episode of the That's My Dad podcast. We're inspiring fathers to become great dads, and we're breaking chains of generational fatherlessness this guy right here broke a chain. You can do it too. See you next week.